Good morning. I would like to call to order the Castle Hills Parks and Projects Commission, July 9th, 10 o'clock, and see if there's a quorum present, and we do have a quorum, so we can proceed. Do we have any citizen comments?
There's one person on the line. Let me see who that is.
Good morning. This is Vic Sylvia.
Good morning. I know you. Okay. Do you have any comments, Mr. Sylvia?
Not at this time.
Great. New business, discussion and possible action on nominations for officers for the commission. It's open.
I guess I'll start off. I'm Jack Joyce. I am the liaison to City Council for the commission. It's nice to see you all this morning. Thanks for joining us. A lot of new members. Thank you guys for being with us. It's great to see you. I'm glad we're back in business after a little bit of a hiatus. But anyway, yes, officers for the commission. The ordinance gives us the opportunity to appoint our own officers. The mayor, you may recall last month, appointed Bernard as chair, which you can certainly right to do, but it might be wise for us as a commission to say, yes, we approve of that appointment. And then if I may, I'll just open it up to discussion of who would, maybe volunteers for vice president or secretary. I don't know that we need a treasurer, but I think those would be two key positions. And I just invite folks to perhaps volunteer or nominate someone else.
I think Bernard, as the most recent past chair, is probably the only one of us who is currently qualified to keep up with the thing. And so if we choose to vote again next year in the middle of our terms, we could pick somebody else. If there's someone who has a particular interest, then you can use this time to prepare to gather your information, figure out how to make this thing go. As to the other offices, I think we do need a secretary. We do need to post our minutes. One of the things about a committee like this, which is essentially a think tank to come together with ideas, is that if we don't write them down someplace, we'll lose them.
Great. And well, and I wanted to let everybody introduce themselves too. I forgot. So we'll start.
I'm Maddie Dillon, Madison Dillon. I've only been in Castle Hills a little over a year, and I'm currently serving as the Garden Club president.
Oh, nice.
And I'm Cindy Martinez. I've lived in Castle Hills. I think it's been 11 years now. And I was nominated or asked by Joe Isbrand to serve. And I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Perfect. I'm Bernard Yettemeyer. We started the Parks and Project or the Parks Committee. And it's just been a fun committee, now commission, to be on and to help out the city grow as a walkable, beautiful community. And that's it.
I'm Skip McCormick, and I've been associated with this committee since it was set up. Guess that's it.
I'm Jack Joyce, council liaison. I've also been associated with the commission since it was set up a few years ago.
Matt Doughton, my family and I have lived in Castle Hills for the last 10 years and really just looking forward to the opportunity to help serve our community.
Nice. Great. So let's make it formal. A vote for the chair.
Yeah, I move that we affirm the mayor's appointment of Mr. Udemeyer as our chair for this current term.
I second that motion.
All in favor? All opposed? Okay, so it passes.
Just a reminder, I don't vote.
Okay. And for a vice president? Do we have any nominations?
I nominate Skip. Sounds like he's been involved with this since it started.
I'll second that. All in favor? Skip is the vice president now. Any opposed? Sorry.
You're not supposed to raise your hand again.
Oh,
there.
sorry, no. And now we'll go on to the secretary. Do we have a nomination for a secretary?
Do we have a volunteer?
Do we have a volunteer for a secretary? Now we need a nomination. Okay, come on. Who wants to do secretary? Ryan?
I'll help out as much as I can.
Great, great, thanks.
Technically, in the past, the chair would put together the minutes for the meeting. Mr. Squire did that. Not putting pressure on you,
Yeah.
Bernard, but if someone captures the motions and things, we'll get the minutes together with my assistance.
Mhm.
And again, in the past, we haven't had any minutes. We've had minutes, but they've not on the website. So one of my goals is our intern is going to start populating that with previous minutes that have been approved over the last few years of this committee. So we can make sure we're caught up on the minutes. But from that standpoint, I'll assist with whatever. If someone wants to capture some of the discussion points and the motions made on agenda items, I'll work with that person to make sure it's done before the next meeting.
I think I still have copies of the minutes that I wrote up until the last meeting or something of that sort.
Yeah, I pretty much have everything in here up until when we last met in summer of last year.
Great. Anybody would like to assist Ryan in creating the minutes? Matt? Great, thanks, Matt. All in favor of Matt being secretary? It's unanimous. Thank you, Matt. Great. Okay, let's move on to item 3, discussion and possible action on the comprehensive master plan subcommittee report and a possible Castle Hills Business Council. Mr. Joyce.
Thank you, Bernard. Do you want to skip over the nomination for the alternate?
Oh, sorry.
It's your
No.
privilege.
Let's do that. 3.2, discussion and possible action on a nomination for an alternate to the commission. And I wanted to nominate Dr. Victor Sylvia. He was on the citizens, one of the citizens to be heard, or not to be heard, but that was online right now. He's been a resident for over 10 years. I don't know how long. And he's wanted to be part of the community and serve in the community. So I'd like to nominate Dr. Victor Sylvia.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous.
So-
And
Tuesday night, that's on the agenda, so I will talk to the mayor.
Okay.
Let him know.
great. Thanks, Ryan. Okay, now, Jack.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. As you all know, we've been working on that comprehensive plan for some time now. There have been 3, I guess, major efforts that have been made up a part of it. The first was a survey we did, I believe it was in February of 21. And it was quite successful, I would say. We got over 240 responses. And there's a summary, I won't read through it, but we put together a summary and presented to council, I guess, I don't know, mid-year 2021, whatever it was. But anyway, I'll send this to you guys. I neglected to send it to you the other day, but I will send that to you. But it's really very interesting. I would say that we learned that some of the qualities that our friends in Castle Hills like are the country feel of it, the rural feel, the trees, that sort of thing. They really appreciate the police force and the fire force. That's something that's very important to folks. And the central location, friendliness of people, beautiful homes and things. I mean, there's so many things to like about this area. So anyway, it's a very interesting summary, and it's worth looking through. So I would encourage you all to look at that. The second thing we did was in the summer of 21, we had what we call a speakers forum, where we had, I think it was 13 speakers presenting for, 15 or 20-minute presentation followed by Q&A on different topics that are related to comprehensive planning. Among them was economic development, green spaces, zoning, land use. I mean, just a whole variety of topics. And those things are on the website if you feel like looking at some of those presentations. They were really quite interesting and educational. And I would say we probably had, I would guesstimate about 200 folks who tuned in. So it was all Zoom. That, it was at the time, the height of COVID, so it was all Zoom. And so roughly 200 folks, I would say, tuned into those various discussions. So that was worthwhile. And then the other step we did was we had workshops, live workshops here in council. It was also conducted by Zoom. And that's where we had some architects come in. Council allowed a few dollars to pay for some architects to help us discern what were the priorities of the community. And so those are very interesting. We had 2 workshops, and out of that came these drawings that you see here, these sketches that you see on the wall here, which depicts the community's priorities and potential ways to execute them, what they might look like. That's kind of what the architects did for us. And so we're engaged now in the what we hope is the final step, where we're actually trying to write the document. And so we have, I have an outline here that I'll pass out, but there's probably 4 or 5 centers of activity, I would say, within that effort. And let me pass this out so you guys can have a sense of what's going on.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So as you can see, we propose that the document be divided into, I guess, 4 categories, essentially: live, work, grow, and play. And the various topics fit under that. Now, there's a lot of overlap. I mean, it's not a clean break between all of them, and they're all kind of related. But we thought it was a nice way to divide it up that made sense. And so anyway, the writing of that is underway now. And we hope to have a draft document together, I would say, within the next, hopefully, 60 days or so. This is really I must confess, this is the hardest part of it, because we got to sit down and just gather all this information and put it down in a reasonably succinct form. So it's taken a little bit of time. So bear with us if you would, but hopefully in the next 60 days, we should have a draft together. And at that point, we probably need to present the draft to the community. I would think that we'd come up with a PowerPoint, present that to the community, and then absorb the community's concepts, and at that point, present it to council. And if council is happy with it, we'll take their comments and go into the final document. So that's kind of the plan, and that's where we stand now. And Certainly, I welcome any comments on the agenda, I'm sorry, on the table of contents or what we've done or what we plan to do. So you guys are welcome to make any comment that you wish. Skip, by the way, is also a member of the committee. The Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee is what it's known as. It is actually born out of this committee a couple of years ago. And so this committee, if it wishes, certainly is within its right to ask the CPAC to come make presentations and kind of update you from time to time. So I think that's the story. So I certainly would welcome any questions or comments that you'll have.
Thanks, Jack.
So basically you're saying this is the plan. You're coming up with, these are the ideas and this is what we want to focus on?
Well, that's a table of contents, Cindy. I would say that is the plan.
Okay,
I forwarded you the link to that over the last couple of days.
Yes.
It's on the website. So feel free when you get time to look through it. There's some terrific, in my opinion, some terrific ideas in there. We want to make the city more walkable. We want to make it more cycle friendly, bicycle friendly. We want to establish a kind of a city center, which might be here. And the group really would like to see more investment in this area, more investment in the commons, perhaps a redoing of this building, or even in our wildest dreams, perhaps replacing it. Calling Northwest Military a main street, converting it into a main street, making it more pedestrian, more bike friendly. Maybe developing the southern part of Military from about Zornia on down, where it's residential there. Maybe some of that could be mixed use, maybe with some retail on the bottom and residential above. Or maybe it could be townhomes or something like that. But anyway, those are some of the principal ideas, and feel free to look through the December presentation. That's kind of the essence of it, Cindy. And, you know, if you have any comments or not, my goodness, we certainly welcome it. But that's it. That's what you're going to see when you, those are the presentation boards, as they call them, that are there.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, let's move on to 3.4. Discussion and possible action of shade structure in the commons as part of the Commons Master Plan and identify funding options. So Ryan.
Thank you, Bernard. And let me just, I hate to jump in for Councilman Joyce or Mr. McCormick, but even you, Bernard, but just for everyone who's new to the group, as Mr. McCormick had mentioned, this had started as a parks MPO kind of whatever projects you wanted to do. Let's look at it and however it helps the community from that standpoint. I think originally Mr. McCormick had started as highlighting some projects that we can nominate and send to the MPO for the Alamo area projects. We're looking at West Avenue, and of course that's since changed because, you know, Dutch Brothers is there now because we were going to take up some right away, help buses get through there. And so that was kind of some of the stuff that was coming through that commission at that time. The branding committee, that's why we have sort of the new street signs, the banners out on Lemonwood here. Mr. Isbrand was part of that as well. That helped shape as well as the mayor, because I think the mayor and Mr. Isbrand were part of the committee that looked at how we get the new street signs out there and sort of brand. And sort of the next step with that is eventually getting monument and gateways into Castle Hills from that standpoint. The comp plan, as Mr. Joyce said, that's kind of started here as far as getting its legs. And I like to go back to Castle Hills Elementary with Bernard and the discussions we had with the school and NISD about using the playground. That also kind of blossomed out of this committee back then as well as the project that we partially funded with them on the sidewalks right here on Honeysuckle. And then the Commons Master Plan. And what I'll do is send out the full Commons Master Plan, because I just put copies of shade structures of the sections and maybe the exercise equipment or what you have there on the dais, but I'll send the full Commons Master Plan. And I think that's one of the biggest things that's come out of here so far, is that we actually have a full master plan for what we want to do, whether that's phased in, piecemealed. There's there's prices with all of these that the consultant did for us. So I think that was the biggest, I'd say, accomplishment, to have a roadmap for the commons and the vacant lot over there. As you can see, the just in cinching the picture there, it laid out from stage area, play area, gazebo, event area, trail. So it walked about all the amenities that the commons could possibly have if this was fully kind of blown out and incorporated. And of course, as you see in the corner there over by the vacant lot by Persimmons, that could actually be connected to the commons. As it says F right there is a park link, which would be like a trail to connect there. So there's ideas and concepts of what could go in the vacant lot, anywhere from a pickleball court, a tennis court. I think they talked about a garden area, exercise equipment. And then of course we have the commons, and we just have to keep the right balance for the commons because we have so many events, especially Castle Hills Fiesta. But one of the main things, you know, that we need to start looking at too is the mayor was going to work to try to fundraise for a playscape there as part of this, and a shade structure. And then there was also a concept of just a little area for a splash pad for the kids to run in where the water shoots up, which would use recyclable water. So one of the things that Mr. Councilman Joyce asked me to look at too was the city received, like any other city did, they received the American Rescue Plan funds, and the city received about $1.5 million, I believe. And so we've already carved out about 300,000 of that in the current adopted budget. And as we go over the next 2 months, we're going to be putting together the proposed budget for next year, which we could carve out more dollars related to the commons, specifically installing a shade structure of some type. So the idea here would be figure out where we'd want this shade structure and what this shade structure in particular would look like. There's examples in there all the way from like gazebos to just putting up the nylon type coverings from that standpoint. But ideally, when we discussed this commons master plan, it was actually talking about going in the corner by the fire department. So when the kids came across, they could access the playground, the shade structure, just right there across the street. Obviously, there was a discussion about having a fence that went down the right of way there for the kids. Right. So, and if not, we'd put ballers down there, you know, for vehicles that would drive by, something like that to protect the kids in that area. But again, these are just some of the concepts, and I will send out the full master plan to everybody so they can look it over. But going back, there is a category for use of the American Rescue Plans that talks about improving your cities or community parks, specifically shade structures, bathrooms, other things. Part of that was to get people outside, outdoors because of COVID, those kind of things. So we just got to figure out what we want it to look like, and then get a price and talk about how we carve it into next year's budget. Obviously, it would be recommended to City Council, and then I would work to get that installed at some point.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Do we have any action that we want to associate with this agenda item?
Let me just ask a question if I may. Mr.
Yes.
Nard. Does anybody looking at the options for where these shade structures might be located and how they might be constructed, does anybody have any opinion? Do we like any of this? Perhaps the first question is, as Mr. Rapley alluded to, was the location. He had mentioned that maybe over by the fire department might be a good one, because, you know, we got to keep in mind the ultimate use of this commons, which, you know, it gets filled with people and stuff at Fiesta. So we don't want something probably right in the middle messing everything up. And there are concerts too, from time to time. So it, you know, it needs to be fairly open. So maybe off to the side is a better idea, although it's depicted more centrally here in this particular diagram.
I took a picture. Yeah, I took a picture of one in a small town in Iowa,
Okay.
and it has bathrooms connected on one end, and then just a simple structure with a metal roof. I'll show it around. Yeah. But I thought it would be good. The gazebo is good, but it's kind of the use of a gazebo is
limiting.
kind of limited.
And I talked to Bernard about this before because we were looking at the pictures.
Yeah.
And I like the idea that it's on the side and that we preserve that middle area. I love that we can do different things, concerts and Fiesta Castle Hills and snow days and Easter egg hunts and things where people can gather and not have something that's just going to take over the whole space, because we are all of different ages. We have some with littles, but some of us are aging here and want to have that walking space and or a place to come and exercise or relax or meet. I do early intervention speech therapy, and I've actually had families meet me here at the Commons so we can walk and talk and show. And man, if we tried to walk to the Castle Hills playground and it was locked, and it was, but just to work with my families to show them ways to encourage their child's speech when they're itty bitty, and playgrounds and places that are common, especially for us. I'm mostly on the south side. So if they move, we still stay with them. So that's why we ended up here, because this was a more common, centrally located area. And so I think it's nice to have the little kid stuff, but they only stay little for a little while. Most of us are adults and want to still keep using our community space as we get older. So I think that's important to keep in mind. And then I liked all the shades. I think they're pretty cool looking. And so I think it just goes back to what's practical for our community, what kind of shade we choose and what's affordable.
We spent quite a time in the last year or two looking at the possibility of a large playground area. And the expenditures would be around $1 million, maybe more. And it would have taken up most of the area of the commons. And I've driven around and looked at some of the playgrounds in other cities, Shirts and similar area and that sort of thing. And these are the same types of playgrounds we were looking at using here. And the fact is that in the summertime in Texas, they don't get a heck of a lot of use in the daytime. And the other is that if you build all over that space, then you lose the ability to use it for all kinds of things. I mean, the movie night kind of goes by the way, there's concerts kind of pass away if you don't have any place for people to spread out. You can't use the grass, that kind of thing. Our fiesta activities and other parties, the picnics that we've had out there in the past, we lose the opportunity to use that space for those other things that we might want to use them for. And so what my thought has always been that whatever we put in should be small, and we should leave the bulk of the space available for badminton or pickleball or whatever else people want to do, or if they want to come out and just spread out with a blanket, that's fine too. We've considered putting in some shade facilities similar to the materials that have been used on the shades over the police cars. Same kind of stuff. And it's not terribly expensive, but we could put in a small area of shade like that without too much expense, and wouldn't take up too much land area. One place where you might want to put it might be over the water fountain, for example, or maybe one of the corners up at the top or right or left of the walkway, where you have some plantings and trees and whatnot, maybe a little shade where people could put out a few chairs and sit and watch the activities, whatever they might be. So there are a whole bunch of options. And the problem is when you've got a whole bunch of good ideas, we cram all that stuff into the common. We can take this piece over here, chop it up, a whole bunch of little pieces and use it for hundreds of different things. And that kind of destroys the benefits of the commons too. So we have to kind of be careful how we go about it.
Any other comments?
Well, if we look at the playground, any type of playscape, I would for sure that we'd have some type of protective covering like we do here over that playground.
Mhm.
So that would provide some type of shade as well. So I wouldn't not recommend us not having a playground without some type of shade structure above it.
Right. All right.
And is there on this building or, structure that we're talking about, like that picture you showed
Mhm.
with restrooms, are we contemplating that for this? And like, are all options on the table, or is this more of just a shade structure?
Is that would that be part of the funding option? Like a shade structure?
Yeah, I think whatever the commission here comes up with, I think that what you probably should do is come up with 3 different types of shade structures, figure out the square footage and how much it would take up of that commons, and then put a price to it, and then go from there.
All right. Work.
Well, I'd like to suggest that we might consider putting a shade over the water fountain, and at each of the corners on the north side of the commons, where we wouldn't take up too much of the space in the middle of the commons that we use for concerts and movie nights. Yeah, those 2 corners. And there's some trees down on the south end of the commons where they provide some shade.
Yeah, and I think it can be done in such a way that it doesn't hinder our ability to hold Fiesta. Because maybe some of the booths could be within the shade structure.
Mhm.
So, it's not like you're losing that space. You're still going to be able to use it. As long as it's tall enough.
Right.
And modest in its structure, I guess. Which is why I kind of like simple. I really like the ideas that are in here. Because it's, as you mentioned, Bernard, it's just a fabric
Right.
roof, and that's reasonably expensive. And maybe 10 years from now, the color will fade and we might have to replace it. But I mean, that's not that big a deal.
For example, the ones we have out here for PD,
Mhm.
that whole row, that
Yeah.
was about 24,000.
And how long does that last, the durability?
I was told up to 10 years. I mean, like Councilman Joy said, there's probably some point you need to replace it. But I was under the understanding about 10 years. So
Now, is it an option to do like the metal roof and a simple structure, as in it won't take up like a broad, like maybe wood,
Well, I would consider it a valid option for sure, Bernard, but we recognize it's going to be a lot more expensive
Mhm.
because a metal roof is expensive.
Right.
And then, of course, the other question that your photo brings up is, do we want to have restrooms as part of this?
Well, I think, yeah, I think we should think about it because, I mean, right now, everybody has to run in here.
Mhm.
And they do run in here.
Yeah.
So even if we have one, I know that brings up the cost, but if we have the funding to carve out, hopefully, for a restroom, I mean, I think we should definitely take advantage of it.
Yeah, it's certainly worth taking a look at and
Mhm.
getting a price on. And I might mention, just as part of the comprehensive plan effort, Mr. Middleman and I are looking at a potential remodel of this facility. And one of the ideas that we're exploring is taking the community room and putting it on this side of the building.
Mhm.
So that the restrooms would be open to next to the commons. So you
And
wouldn't
even
have-
if you can put an outside entrance,
Yeah.
for a restroom,
Right, but that's a concept. It's nowhere near a reality. It needs
Yeah.
to go through a lot of, I think, design analysis, community analysis and comment. We're a long way from that, but I just wanted to throw that out here as a possibility to help with the restroom situation.
And the one I showed was just a simple restroom, not a men and women's, just one one little restroom. It's just something to have out there. So, right. Exactly. No, that's.
Well, the thing that could be done is, you know, if you look at the concept here where the playground is, you could put a small playscape over there and then put some type of shade covering like we have out here, right? And then you can match that shades covering on the other side exactly right there. So they kind of look like they match up. And the good thing about this is you can actually pull this out of the ground and use it somewhere else. So hypothetically,
Right.
if we got a new city hall, we could take that with us.
Mhm.
So that can always evolve. Whatever shade structure you put in that similar fashion can be mobile and be moved from that standpoint. But it might be good to match up a shade structure just standalone over here to the side, to the commons over there closest to City Hall, but make sure we have some type of shade structure like this if we're going to put in a playground or a little splash pad that just even shoots up
Yeah.
water. So I know a particular playground in New Braunfels that's right next to the playscape where kids just run through the water that shoots up, and the playground's right next to it. So they just get off the playground, go run through the water, get back on the playground. And it's got a nice little shade covering, just like the one out here. So I always say we can just borrow from other cities too.
Right. And something that's already up, you can see it, you know. Any other comments?
What, Ryan, what do we need to talk about or take action on the Mr. Roman's idea of the exercise equipment? Is there some sort of a plan of that? I know he's
He-
got that idea.
When he came by yesterday and I had told him we had this meeting, and he had an idea because he had seen a few parks outlined in San Antonio with that.
Yeah.
I think some of that, if I recall, San Antonio and other cities got that through grants, I believe. And that's something obviously that we could participate in and try to go after to get partial funding for. But I think there's actually a grant that's geared towards outdoor fitness equipment that cities utilize in that sense. But I think that was his initiative to try to get something done as a section of this plan.
How does the commission feel about that idea?
I think it sounds great. I'm not an exerciser though. So I think, oh, would that make me want to come and use it if I had that available? I know on Jackson Keller, that little park has some stations, and it seems like people are always on there. So to me, if it's something our community would actually use, I think it's a great idea. And especially if it's, not too hard to use.
Well, I think
I've
the
seen-
idea is
I've
if we
seen
ever,
that situation that's set up in a couple places. One of them is in Rogers Ranch Park over by West and Blanco. And the other one is down in the golf course park in
Almost.
Almost Basin. And when they first put them in, I didn't see anybody using them for 2 years. And now more recently, there are a few people that are stopping and using the exercise facilities there. Although I walked in Rogers Ranch Parks for a long time and I never saw anybody using the exercise facility.
I think the idea is with the vacant lot over there to, as part of when you see the plan, it's considered phase 2 of building out that vacant lot with some type of amenity, whether that's pickleball or tennis, and then having the exercise stations there.
Around that. Yeah, people really enjoy the now concrete walkway, the commons. I mean, that's like
That
you
was,
said.
that was the first thing that they said to do was as part of that. If you look at the, let's see, the trail there,
Mhm.
where it says 6 foot wide concrete, that's the first thing we did because obviously, as you know, Bernard, that and Councilman, that there was years of deterioration with just having that asphalt. And so it was just time to rip off that Band-Aid and put in concrete.
And it really helped out, I think, with the accessibility of the commons. I mean, a lot more people use it. They they enjoy it. Like you said, it's the walking that, but if we can add
And in the
some,
big picture, cost wise, I think we spent maybe 20 some thousand. And we would have spent an extra 10,000 for dispose of the existing asphalt, but our public works guys removed it all and saved the money there.
nice.
Yeah, I'd like to keep the space used down to the minimum possible. Put it within reasonable proximity to the walking path. And avoid putting down the big asphalt,
Mhm.
letting it grow out of hand.
Any other ideas?
So to move forward with these ideas, do we need to come up with a scope of work or something so we can start getting some pricing? You and Ryan, do you think that's a reasonable approach? Because somebody would need to
Yeah. Do
put that together.
you want a more harder suggestions, or can you come up with some, Ryan?
Possibility of certain shade structures, right?
Correct.
Probably could. I guess what I will probably say that I'll work with Bernard directly. We'll come up with some ideas for the next meeting and illustrate those. Try to put a price to them as much as possible. The best part of if I see something in another city and I can call and ask, how much did y'all pay for that?
Mhm. Yeah.
That's probably the easiest approach to go. But for the most part, I know, again, what we did here with the police is we have a figure of 20 some thousand. And so you can just say half of that would be sort of a similar cost if we were just to outfit. And again, you're just trying to figure out how much square footage and where we'd want to put it from that standpoint.
Mhm.
So everything here is a concept. So I think obviously with this commission, it's going from a concept to making everything pretty firm on what we want to do and how it's phased over the next few years.
Do we need an engineer to suggest locations and sizes for these things so we can measure the impact to the use of the
I would
commons?
probably say we could have one of our engineers start looking at square footage and kind of measuring things off and putting it on paper so you can actually see if we had a playground, how much it's going to take up, how much a shade structure would be. We could probably have all that with our just general engineers do it. Nothing too comprehensive.
Great. So we can make that a task for Ryan,
Sure, who?
for Ryan.
Ryan? Sure, I'm
get with-
always willing to give Ryan more.
Yeah.
work.
Thank you, Ryan. All right, well, let's move on to discussion 3.5, discussion and possible action on commission task for the near future. Mr. Joyce.
Thank you, sir. The ordinance is very open in what it allows us to do. It basically says whatever projects we think the city needs, we can investigate and look into. But there's a couple that come to my mind in thinking about this commission, and one is fundraising. We know that as this comprehensive plan takes shape, we're going to need money to further investigate the ideas that we like and develop a CIP. That's going to take engineered time. I know Councilman Isbrand and myself have talked about the need for a zoning analysis by a professional. And we all talk about how the zoning ordinance needs to be looked at, but we wonder if it wouldn't be a better idea to have a professional look at the zoning ordinance and provide some good guidance and be able to do research, and somebody with experience at it who does it for a living. And so but that's going to take money. So, and we also there's another potential thing we have in terms of looking at economic development. There's a fellow by the name of the retail coach. And what Mr. Farmer's expertise is analyzing retail activity. And what he can do using cell phone data is look at our city and tell us where shoppers are coming from based on cell phone data. And Brian gave me a look at one of the things Mr. Farmer had done for the quarry. And to my surprise, a lot of shoppers from the quarry come from here. And so an analysis like that, it seems to me, gives us insight into what we could really use here, what businesses we should strive to have here in Castle Hills. So anyway, again, the gentleman's a professional. I think the proposal was around $4,000, and that's money that's not in the budget. So perhaps that's something that fundraising efforts could address if the budget cannot afford it, and that remains to be seen. But I think these are the kinds of things that would make sense to try to find funds from various government groups or Kronkosky foundations, whoever it might be. So that, anyway, that's one thing I think would be a good thing for us to delve into. Another thing is an evaluation of some of our codes. You know, I hear complaints all the time, as maybe you all do as well, about, oh, this guy's not keeping up his yard and he's not cutting his grass and trimming his trees, and you know, he's not painting his house and the roof has holes in it and stuff. You know, I exaggerate, but those portions of our ordinance that deal with the appearance of our properties, both the yards and the homes, I think it would be worthwhile looking at. And actually, I have invited Mr. Zamarone and Mr. Myers. Mr. Myers is our new inspector, our new code guy. And when I talked to him about the idea of speaking in front of us, he was delighted, because he has lots of insight into maybe some weaknesses in some of the codes or some ideas on how they might be otherwise strengthened and revised. So if y'all don't mind, I will invite them for our next meeting to come and speak, and we might think about whether or not that's something we want to undertake. Okay. Anyway, those are the two things I had in mind.
Can I jump in here, Jack? Everybody should have received Jack's email with the copy of the statute attached. But I want to call your attention to a couple of things in here. Jack's mentioned that the statute's real broad. Yeah, it is real broad. But there are a couple of places where it says kind of what we're to look at. It says the city won't give us any money. We don't have any authority to direct anybody on staff, or we don't really have any administrative authority over any of the staff people. The Parks Commission include preparation of an inventory of existing parks and preparation of a plan. And I've given you a copy of the last inventory and plan for the parks that was prepared in 2020. And you're welcome to look that over, and I suggest you do that. We're authorized to explore and negotiate grants or other funding that might benefit city parks. Commission can explore and negotiate future park projects and joint use projects. And we've already done that, or Bernard has, with the city for the use of the elementary school playground by the public. The commission has explored preparation for future city projects and joint projects with nearby cities and state and local agencies. As Ryan pointed out, we set up in the first place to respond to a $60 million grant that the Metropolitan Planning Organization received as a result of Volkswagen's falsifying some of their emissions data. And what we were looking for was a project that we could put in that met their standards, which were you had to have a project that was going to cost at least $1 million. And it had to be in by a certain time. I think we had 3 months or something like that to work on it. So I did a little traffic study over here, and the things I came up with were 2 right turn lanes, one from west on the eastbound 410 access road, and the other one from Jackson Keller on the west at the south end of the HEB parking lot. You take some additional road space out of the side of the road at HEB and in front of the coffee shop now, and make a little turn lane there. And that would speed up traffic turning because it would allow those people that need to turn to go ahead and get in that lane and turn on a red light if they could. And looking at the traffic on Jackson Keller in the afternoon, it's humongous. There was a mile-long line of cars there every time I went to count. And there were complaints of a lot of cars, and especially school buses driving up Gladiola in order to avoid the intersection at West and 410. So there were those kinds of things. The problem was that neither of the projects I look at amounted to more than $1 million. The one on the south side of HEB in Jackson Keller, the city of San Antonio owns the right of way on Jackson Keller and not Castle Hills. So it would have taken some doing to coordinate that, and it was still less than $1 million total. So we expanded the committee to be able to draw a long-range plan so that we could get into some of these projects while they were still in the formation stage, rather than waiting until they made the announcement, because by that time, it's too late to get anything done. You have to be associated somehow or another with the San Antonio traffic people, the TxDOT people, in order to be able to do anything really significant. So that was kind of the motivation for setting this up the way we did. And then other things kind of came out, and it looked like we needed to expand the project a little more. So we gave ourselves the right to look at anything, essentially. We can brainstorm, and we can look at the most ridiculous ideas anybody can convey to us without criticizing them at the front end, and to see if there's any really benefit to those ideas. And so that's one of the things that we can do, is we can bring in the ideas of the public at large, and you can bring in your most wild ideas, or the ideas that somebody brings up to you to talk about here, and evaluate and see if we can find a way to get some kind of benefit for them. So you might take time to read that. There's a paragraph for both the Parks and for the Projects Commission. And it says essentially that we can look at pretty much anything we want to. Commission seeks out and explores and vets proposed projects in furtherance of the city master plan, capital improvements plan, streets and drainage plan, comprehensive plan, and other city plans as may be developed, as well as projects which benefit the general well-being and economic development of the city. So there aren't any limitations on it. Anything at all that looks like it's going to do us some good, we can look at. So I encourage you by all means to put on your thinking caps, or talk to your constituents and friends and see if they can come up with some thoughts for us. Anybody have any questions for me?
Thank you, Skip.
That's it. Thank you.
Great. I guess we'll move on to 3.6, discussion and possible action of scheduling date and time of the next meeting. So this is pretty much open. If anybody have any suggestions. The way we did it before was like on need. So I think next month, because I think we have things that we want to get implemented, like the shade structures, fairly quickly. So next month, sometime, what y'all can suggest a date?
The first Saturday in August, I believe, is August 6th. So if we need to expedite the next meeting, that may be the option.
Everybody okay with August 6th? Ryan?
Sure, I'll work with it.
All right, all right. Okay, let's do August 6th. All in favor for August 6th? All right, so August 6th, 10 a.m., our next meeting. And any announcements by members of, on items of community interest? So my wife wants a splash pad. So that's community interest. That's what she said. And I think she wrote a strongly worded email to Ryan about it a couple months ago. So that's all I have.
Has anybody ever talked about, I know there's some grants with the USDA for pollinator gardens, like wildflowers, or has anybody talked about that or looked into it?
Mm-mm.
No, just that in phase 2, there was the idea of putting a garden over there in the vacant lots incorporated with some type of amenities. It's not out of the realm of possibility, you know.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And Jack, I think you came up with when on one of those walking drainage things, there was,
Yeah, the idea of the linear park.
right.
Right, yeah, that will be incorporated into our green spaces chapter, but yes, a few of us are meeting to discuss that and turning some of these concrete drainage channels into earthen channels with plants and trees and walkways and benches and things. One of the members of the Comprehensive Plan Committee, Agdel Rivera, is with the San Antonio River Authority, and that's what he does and has been doing for most of his career, for 10 years or so, in the San Antonio area, is converting creeks into channels that can be usable channels, parks, linear parks, essentially. And it stems from, I don't know, my first view of that was, I don't know if you guys have been in New York City lately, but there's a thing called the High Line, which is an old elevated railroad trestle that was abandoned for years and years and years. And they converted it into a large garden with different trees and plants and a walkway, and it's hugely popular, but it's beautiful. And they also incorporate art, different type artists have different displays along the way. It's very cool. It's about a mile or so walk, I think. But anyway, that's one of the early ideas. And but anyway, Agdel is a terrific resource, and hopefully we'll come up with some good ideas for what to do.
Yeah, and so it kind of goes with but I didn't know about grants that you could apply for.
I'll look into it more. I have a friend that she works in Nebraska, but she told me about it. So I'll-
Neat, yeah.
What about connecting the green, the Salado Creek Greenway, like bike trails? Have we talked about that?
I'm not sure what Flato Creek is, Maddie, but one of the benefits we think in looking at bike trails and pedestrian trails is connecting to San Antonio. And perhaps Hardberger Park, that's one of the proposals on these diagrams up here, is connecting to Hardberger Park. And I think not only is that a potential health benefit, potentially an economic development benefit, because if we can draw in some of the bikers from Hardberger Park into into Castle Hills via the bike trails, that could certainly do a nice help our restaurants and shops and things. And I'm sure help them flourish and perhaps create new ones. But yeah, that's the connection to other entities is definitely in the plan.
Yeah, like I see San Antonio, they when they're connecting, they just make it maybe like 10-foot sidewalk instead of a 5-foot. And so I guess there's like 2 lanes that kind of can go back and forth. And like you said, connecting Hardberger Park, but you would have to work with TxDOT, I would think, for Northwest Military.
Yeah, well, TxDOT, to our surprise, is amazingly flexible with respect to creating bikeways or pedestrian ways on Northwest Military. I was shocked. 3 of us went to meet with them, and they did say one thing you cannot do if you want to create bikeways on Military is take away a lane. But you can, they said that you can squeeze the lanes down in order to find 5 foot or so for a bike lane, something like that. That they were open to. But there's also a lot of right of way on both sides of Northwest Military. So I don't think space is a problem. It's just the methodology we choose can have a big impact on the budget. If we can just use what's there and do a striping project, you know, that's pretty reasonable, I think, in cost. But anyway, yeah, TxDOT was amazingly flexible.
They were amenable too, if we ever wanted to take Northwest Military and put, what's it called?
The middle,
The middle, you put the landscaping down the
Right, right,
middle.
right.
Yeah,
So they were amenable to that too, if we ever wanted to do that.
awesome.
Can't remember what that's called, but
Esplanade, is that the word you're looking for? Esplanade,
think so, sir.
median?
It's 11:10 on a Saturday.
Okay, any other comments? All right, well, I'm gonna, or Skip usually does this part.
What's that?
Do you have any, do you want to make a motion to do anything at this time?
Other than to adjourn?
Yeah.
No, I move we adjourn.
All in favor? Great. Our meeting is adjourned. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernard.